You start writing your first book and you realize you have a million questions and no answers. How long should a book be? How long should the chapters be? What is the proper format for a manuscript? And what tense should you be writing in? All you know is that you don't want to do it wrong, so you spend countless hours on research only to come up empty-handed. In this video, I'll tell you everything you need to know about how long a book or chapter should be, what tense to write in, and how to format a manuscript so that you can get going. So when a writer starts their first story, every one of them has the same question: how long is it supposed to be? Now, like a lot of things, it depends on genre conventions and whatnot, and how well you actually execute it. But there is a general idea that the average novel is between 60 and 90,000 words, and anything under 50,000 is in novella territory. There's a lot of advice floating around about how you shouldn't try to pitch a 100,000 word or longer novel to any publishers, especially as a first-time author. But I would basically disregard that advice in its entirety. There is, back in the day, having an actual publisher was worth it. These days, I would argue it's not. And I would argue that they're not providing enough value that they should be able to dictate what form your art takes. Now, that in and of itself is a whole entire video. So if you want me to cover that, let me know in the comments down below. In terms of genre conventions, things like horror, thriller, and mystery tend to be on the shorter side, and they tend to hover closer to that 50,000 word mark, but there are plenty of bestsellers that go way beyond that in length. Romance, YA, which stands for young adult, and romantasy do tend to average in that 60 to 90,000 word mark we talked about earlier. Now with sci-fi and fantasy, as always, those tend to be the ones that have the most leeway and play fast and loose with the rules. You can do novellas, you can do that 60 to 90,000 word mark, and there's not really any upper limit for those. If a sci-fi or fantasy becomes grand enough in scale and achieves an undetermined threshold for its length, really, there's no absolute cutoff. But if it becomes long enough and it becomes grand enough in scale, it'll become a epic fantasy or a space opera. The exact line where that happens is drawn differently depending on who you ask. Some people say it's 120 or 140,000 words. Others say that it's 200,000 words. Like a lot of things in the art world, you shouldn't get too caught up on labels. And I do really want to stress that you shouldn't be too concerned about how many pages something is, because depending on how you format it in the end, there could be drastically different page counts for the same amount of words. So if you're thinking about the length of your novels and chapters, you should be thinking in absolute word count. That is something that's consistent no matter how it gets formatted. And now that we've answered the question of how long should an actual book be, let's get into how long a chapter should be. It does vary. Now that might be an answer you're getting a bit tired of at this point, but it is the honest truth. A good rule of thumb is to aim for 3,000 word long chapters. That's approximately 6 pages of manuscript or 12-ish pages of finished book. Like I said before, formatting will make that very different. It could end up as 8 pages or like 14, 16. I don't know how you're going to format it. So just focus on the word count there. I aim for 3,000. and that is a good rule of thumb, like I said. 2,000, still perfectly fine. You're still well within your ballpark. If you hit 4,000, that's the exact same too, right? You're well within the ballpark of what's normal. You will have chapters that stand out though in length. My average chapter is about 3,000 or 3,500, but I do hit 5,000 pretty regularly, and I do only do a 1,500 word chapter pretty regularly as well. You don't want them all to be the same length, that's for sure. You want to vary it, you want to switch it up, whatever the art calls for. You can have a chapter that's straight up one paragraph. If the art calls for it and it makes sense, totally okay. If it's one paragraph, it could be like 50 words or like 150 words. Don't do that regularly though. You do want it to you do want to get them turning the page a little bit while they're reading. And you also don't want them to have to sort of hype themselves up before they read your book, because each chapter is a marathon. You want it to be moderately easy to consume, right? Or relatively easy, however you want to phrase it. It's all about sort of being friendly to them, varying the pace, keeping things somewhat newish to them. But again, to give you a explicit target, anywhere between 2,000 and 4,000. 3 is a good average to have, and you'll hit a bunch of different bounds for exact word count depending on what you do. When you end your chapter, you either want to leave them feeling satisfied, on the edge of their seat with tension, or craving more. The main thing that you want to remember though is to not hit that exact same beat over and over and over again. Variety is the name of the game here. The main thing here is pacing. Make sure that each chapter functions as its own mini story and is satisfying to read in and of itself. And make sure you go into a new chapter in spots that feel natural or in areas of tension that call for it. You want to give them an experience and keep them wanting to continue to be a part of it. With all the word counts sorted out, that leads us to our next big question. How do you format a manuscript? This one's a question I struggled with a lot when I was starting out, and I spent so long, wasted so much time really, researching this, trying to find an answer, and I couldn't. And that's a big part of why I'm writing or making this video right now. And after all that time, it turns out the answer is, it doesn't really matter. Your format for your book is not really important until you've actually done several rounds of editing and you're actually doing the real format. When I start a manuscript for a new book, what I do is I open up a new Microsoft Word document. You don't have to use Microsoft Word. You can use Google Docs, whatever you happen to have. Not really important. But I will put the title in the top middle, bold and underlined. And then if I don't have a name, I'll just say protagonist's story, whatever the name of the protagonist happens to be, '(S) story. And then I'll press enter. I'll send my text to the left, and I'll write chapter 1, and then I'll start a new line, not bold, not underlined. This is actual just raw writing in the default font. Font doesn't matter at all here. And I'll just start writing. Press tab for every new paragraph. Just not even because you have to, but just to give yourself a little bit of a visual break so that you know where your paragraphs separate more easily. You want your page number in the top right. It doesn't really matter though. Like I said, it's not formatted. Just put your page number somewhere in the header on the top. Could be left, right, middle. Not a huge deal. The whole way through the document is single spaced, so it'll all just continue on. Like if you're doing an essay, That's double spaced, which means you got a line, then you got a big gap, and then you got your next line, even in the same paragraph. Just single space it when you're doing your manuscript. That way, the document's file size is way less, and you don't have to do as much scrolling or searching. You don't have to look as hard for the words. It's way easier to read if you just single space it. Way more convenient for you on multiple fronts there. And like I said before, every paragraph starts with indentation, not as a rule, but just as a convenience thing. It is real quality of life improvement. So you just press the tab button at the start of every paragraph, and then after a few paragraphs, your document will start doing it on its own. You won't even have to worry about it. If you're looking to do a scene break or change POV or pass some time, just press enter twice. So you're leaving an extra line between paragraphs. And in that gap, you can leave it empty if you want to right now. Doesn't matter until it's formatted. But as a placeholder, you can go to that gap between paragraphs. You can align the text to the center. And then you can just press star, 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 like 3 asterisks. You can keep it like that in the final. You don't have to. In the end, you'll probably have some kind of custom little flourish to show a scene break or time lapsing. Or you'll have an icon or something that symbolizes the character. Those aren't a hard rule, though. That's a matter of preference there. Whenever you decide you're done with a chapter, you're going to go up to Insert, Page Break, and you're going to click on that, and it'll open up a new page, as in, there's no more words on the next page. So maybe you have a half a page written, a quarter page, 3/4 of a page. No matter where it is, the second you press page break, it'll send you over to a next page in the document, and you can start writing like normal. You just put, bold, underline, chapter 2, colon, and then on your next line, take the bold and underline off and start writing in just normal generic font. And that's all there really is to that. To be super clear, your manuscript is going to be normal sized 8.5 by 11 printer paper, like the basic default printer paper size that you go to the store and you buy a pack of 500 sheets. It's that size. Don't play with the margins or anything. Don't mess with any of those settings. You don't do any real formatting until you've gone through several rounds of edits, like I said. Actual editors expect no formatting or anything, at least for the most part. And they're expecting to look at something that is just absolute bare bones basics. All they care about is the real words, not how it happens to look at the time they work on it. You don't even have to worry about the formatting until all of the editing is done. If you're even going to choose to do every single step of editing. Some people only do 1 or 2 of the 3 steps. It goes developmental edit, which is the story type of edit, and plot points, characters, all that. Then you get the line edit, which is where your prose is looked at. Then you get the copy edit, which is where the consistency is looked at. Copy is any sort of writing that several people / an infinite number of people are going to be able to see. So if you write an ad, that's copy. If you write a book, that's copy. And the copy editor is looking to make sure that it is all in the same dialect or writing standard, and that all of your syntax is followed. If you're only going to do one type of editor, you're going to want to do the copy editor. That's the person that you're going to trust to catch any huge mistakes you've done. Now, after it goes to the copy editor, you can format it. You can either do it yourself, you can have somebody else format it, and then it goes to your proofreader. This is the first person you're going to give a formatted book to. And the only reason they're seeing it formatted is because part of their job is to make sure you haven't screwed up the formatting. The last thing I want to touch on just real quick is tense. That one, it's all up to preference, whether you do present tense or past tense. And the question just becomes, would you prefer he ran and dove for cover behind the sandbags? Or would you prefer he runs and dives for cover behind the sandbags? Really, it's all up to you. If you want me to do a whole video on tense, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. And that's all I have for today. So in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe.